organizer is the Flemish coordination of the big EGP soil program, European joint program, aiming, of course, I recognize some people, aiming for more knowledge and more efficient policy measures for better climate resilient soils. We have two parts. First, we will give you some presentations to set the scene, and then we'll have a debate, also with your questions, hopefully. And the keynote will be given by my colleague Greet Ruisgaard, soil expert in Leuven, but also member state coordinator of the research within the EGP soil network. So Greet, we are at a conference of sustainable food production. How does that correlate with soil? The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome at this soil session. It's the smallest room, but I don't think it's the least important topic, in the contrary. So indeed, I'm Greet Ruisgaard. I work at Leuven. I'm a soil researcher. I work on sustainable soil management and carbon farming. I hope I do not have to convince you that healthy soils are really very important for healthy food, for good crop production and a good crop quality. But in this presentation, I will not prove this. I hope you all know this. But I will turn it a little bit around. So I will want to show you that really the crop choice and the rotation is key to the soil health. But what is soil health? I will not give a definition here, but in the word soil health, it reminds us that soil is actually really a living ecosystem. So soils are full of life, full of organisms, at least if the soil is healthy. And this soil life, this biodiversity, produces a whole range of processes and functions, like nutrient retention, cycling and uptake, organic matter decomposition, disease suppression, and building the soil structure. We all know earthworms, for instance. They are free labor of the soil. They are the engineers of the soil. They make channels through the soil. They mix the soil with kind of organic substances to make the soil crumbly. They make pathways for roots to grow and water to flow. Okay, so soil life, I think it's really the soil health engine. But how to stimulate soil life? Well, carbon. Carbon is a fuel for soil life. So fresh organic matter, or soil organic carbon, that is already converted fresh organic matter. Microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, they feed on it, on the carbon, and they are the basis of the whole food web, soil food web. Okay, so carbon is a fuel to soil life. Soil life is key to soil health. But how does carbon get into the soil? Well, it's the plants that capture actually the carbon from the air and put carbon into the soil. In agricultural context, of course, there is a harvest, but there is still residues on the soil. There is stubble, there is straw, but also the roots, and the roots exudates. And so it's on this carbon that the soil food web feeds. Sometimes the crop is harvested, then it's fed by the animals, but also this carbon returns by organic amendments and fertilization, for example. Okay, so actually it all comes to this. It's the sun power. It's the ability of plants to convert carbon dioxide in the air with the photosynthesis pathway. So the plant is using sunlight and water to convert the CO2 in carbohydrates and oxygen. So when we want to work on soil health, we really have to maximize the photosynthesis pathway and the ability of plants to capture carbon from the air and put carbon back into the soils. If we want to do that, we should optimize crop growth, and that requires a smart management. So all the decisions that the farmer can take, decisions on crops, on crop rotations, on tillage, on fertilization, on crop production, and so on. Okay, in the next slides, I actually want to give some examples how crop choice actually impacts the management options that the farmer has, and thus also the soil and environmental health. Just some examples. For instance, when we choose a crop, the crop has a certain length of the growing season. Okay? So when the length of the growing season is longer, more carbon can be captured by the atmosphere. There is more growth, but more importantly, there can also be more root growth and root exudates that are released by the roots. So these exudates are kind of organic substances released by the roots to feed the microorganisms near the roots to help actually the plant taking up nutrients and having other functions that are beneficial for the crop. So when we have crops like here, a temporary grassland or a permanent grassland, that's like yeah, the best example maybe, but this kind of crop during nearly the whole year, of course the temperature needs to be right and there needs to be moisture, but during the whole season actually the photosynthesis can go on and more carbon is released into the soil. Another example, in contrast, for instance, potato has a much shorter growing period, so this crop has less potential to add carbon to the soil and so add this fuel to the soil life. So roots are very important because of the root growth and the exudates, but also because of the rooting system. This is a nice figure, I thought. So this is actually an illustration of all kinds of common crops grown here in this region, agricultural crops, cover crops and vegetables. As you can see, all plants have a different rooting system. And this is quite important to have different rooting systems in the rotation. So you can have taproots, for instance, they make macropores, but you can also have very intensive rooting systems. They're very important to bring air into the soil to make it more porous. So different roots will, on a different way, affect the soil structure. But also the rooting depth can be really important. The deeper the roots can go, so if a plant has an ability to grow quite deep, it can extract water from the subsoil. Of course, this is very important in the drought conditions, but also nutrients that are being leached into the subsoil can be brought back into the system again. Another example are harvesting dates. If we have an early sowing, usually if there needs to be fertilization by slurry, often heavy slurry tankers, there is some risk for soil compaction, but also the harvest is a critical moment. So if we have more crops that are harvested late in the season, we have more risk for soil compaction because the harvest machinery is often quite heavy and it's also yeah, usually under more wet conditions, so the soil is more vulnerable to that. I must apologize, these are of course very extreme pictures, so luckily it's not always like this. But even when the tracks are not so deep, soil compaction can accumulate over time, year after year. And so certainly when the compaction is deeper into the soil, it can become a problem for root growth and for the soil functions. So if we, from time to time in the crop rotation, have other crops that are harvested a bit earlier, and yeah, we also have more chance to remediate this. Harvest dates are also important for the ability to have a good established cover crop. So for instance, if we have a cereal crop harvested in summer, then we have the chance to establish a good cover crop that can produce a lot of biomass and also yeah, capture this carbon from the air. Moreover, another advantage actually is that there is more choice for cover crops. So if we are later in the season, it's usually grass or raid that is grown as cover crop. But when there is a harvest already in summer, we have more options to grow mixtures of cover crops, mixtures with different rooting systems, maybe also some species that can flower, that also bring ecosystem services and so on. So that's another advantage. Maybe also known, of course, that different crops have different requirements for fertilization and crop protection. We all know potato is quite vulnerable to disease, so that usually is a crop that usually requires more crop protection. For some crops, they need more mineral nitrogen into the soil until harvest maybe, so these are also crops that are vulnerable for leaching after the harvest. So that's also different. Also, the erosion sensitivity is very different from crop to crop. For instance, here we have onions. Onions is a very fine seed, so it needs a fine seed bed in order to emerge well. It also takes quite a long time, like 6 weeks or so, before there is a quite good soil cover, so this crop is quite vulnerable to erosion in summer, in spring actually. Same for maize. So maize is also quite a crop that is quite vulnerable, so it intercepts the water, but then you have preferential stem flow, and so along the lines there is a risk for soil erosion, but also between the rows because the row distance is quite large. And in contrast, of course, there are crops that have a more permanent soil cover. Here we have grass clover, but maybe also winter wheat during the vulnerable season of spring would be beneficial against erosion. So of course, I've shown quite some adverse effects, and I also know we can optimize this. So we can optimize or prevent at least that negative effects occur due to smart management, like precision agriculture, conservation, tillage, having air pressure systems on the tires, or having earlier maturing varieties. So all good practices, I think, for soil health. But nevertheless, I think I've also have shown you that actually the crop itself and the crop rotation really impacts also the options for the management, and also the more easy it is, or the less easy it is for farmers to work on soil health. But of course, my message is actually, can we then just ask the farmers, okay, diversify your crop, make sure that you have a good crop rotation for soil health. But we, of course, all know that farmers do not work on themselves. They work on the society, in the society, in the free market system. So actually, this free crop choice is not so free. I mean, it needs to be economically interesting. So my plea here is actually like, let's talk about soil-friendly food chains, maybe. Having more crops maybe in the rotation, more potential for other crops, economically attractive crops in the rotation that are soil friendly. Let's maybe think about this all together and not leave this to the farmers only. So these are just some examples. I don't say these are all soil friendly, derived from soil friendly crops, but it shows some innovations also in the agri-food chain, I think. So by also, if the agri-food chain actors also diversify, I think there might be more possibilities for farmers to also enlarge the crop rotations with some crops that are more beneficial for soils. So to conclude, I would like to give the message, let's all talk about soils. It's not only a matter of farmers, but let's all talk about soils. And let's all work together to develop soil-friendly value chains. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Clear argument there. I think the message of Greet was society, the system, the actors should help to facilitate the implementation of all the practices we named as good practices, better practices to obtain healthy soil, which is, of course, you don't need to say, for the long term, a guarantee of good yields. So it's in the interest of everybody. Thank you very much. No questions now. We have the Commission presenting. Giulia Meloni, you work at the European Commission DG Research and Innovation, Unit Bioeconomy and Food Systems. You were involved, I must say, in the Food 2030 policy framework. You know Leuven very well because you studied here, but you're, I think, Italian. My question to you, Giulia, is to what extent do you share the visions and the views of Greet Ruisgaard? Was the analysis correct in your opinion? Do farmers need more holistic and a more fair approach just to be able to pay attention to their soils more than they do nowadays? And yes, the floor is yours. I'm very curious what the Commission has to say about this.
Thank you very much. Indeed, good morning everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, to come back to Leuven. I spent 13 years in Leuven studying here, so it's a true pleasure. Thank you very much. And indeed, I'm Julie Meloni, I'm Policy Officer now at the European Commission in the Unit on Bioeconomy and Food Systems, in DG Director General for Research and Innovation. So I'll show you that actually the RNI policy is a driver for food system change and soil health. This is going to be my main talk today, so really focusing on research and innovation. I'll briefly talk about Horizon Europe. So probably you're aware of our big EU research and innovation program, well, 21-27, so we're already more than halfway. And within it, I would like to show you two things. It's Food 2030 and the mission soil. So I'll start with the Food 2030 now. I thought it was useful to kind of locate food systems within Horizon Europe, so within the research and innovation program. Do we have a pointer here?
Yes.
Is there okay, we'll do without it. But just, you can see that there are, maybe as you know, 3 pillars here. The first one is really on excellent science, so it's more towards researchers. You have the Marie Curie there, for instance. The pillar 3 is more on innovative Europe, so innovations, so really startups. And under pillar 2, you will have global challenges and European industrial competitiveness, and we have more or less 50 billion euros in the period 21-27. And within that, you have the cluster 6, where we operate in Food 2030, and it's on food bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment, and we allocate 9 billion euros in it. And actually, Food 2030, and I'll show you just afterwards, is one of the key tools where we actually work in cluster 6. But Food 2030, I'll show you that it actually is working on several fronts, not only in research and innovation, but also together with member states. And you have here the European Research Area, but also the Standing Committee for Agricultural Research, which is a committee uniting delegates from member states. And you also have the partnerships. And we are actually in the Secretariat of the Sustainable Food Systems Partnership that will start soon. And we also actually try to steer the EU missions, and within the EU mission there is the soil mission. We also work with the innovation and technology side, also together with the new European Innovation Agenda and the regional innovation values. So it's an entire ecosystem, and Food 2030 really tries to kind of bring all these elements together. So just to show you that we're not working in isolation, but we're working with different tools also within Horizon Europe. Maybe you can. Does it work now? Well, okay. So as I was showing you, Food 2030 is really at the core of what we do, and it's our biggest research and innovation policy framework to future-proof our food systems. And we have this idea that we have to include a systemic approach. You know all this, I don't have to explain you how important it is to really have a food systems approach and really connecting and scaling up research and innovation within all the parts of the food systems. We have the 4 priorities. We believe in the nutrition, climate and smart environmental sustainable food systems, but also circularity and innovation and empowerment of communities. So these are our pillars, and how do we deploy them? Well, it started, I like to show this slide because it gives you a bit of an historical perspective. I'm also an historian by training, so I really like these things. But in 2015, you know that there was the Expo in Milano, and in 2016 we already had the first Food 2030 conference. So already like with this idea that we really have to have a food systems approach within our Horizon Europe programming. And later on you'll see we had several conferences. Then we had, of course, as you all know, the European Green Deal unveiled. Going a bit up, you had the Farm to Fork also, and the biodiversity strategies. We had several other conferences. And in the meantime, we had the launch of the Horizon Europe programming. We had expert groups because we work in co-creation. This is what we call, but we work actually together with stakeholders and experts. And we published our Food 2030 pathways and then updated it last year. So in December we had our big event. We had more than 300 people with different stakeholders coming from really wide and diverse backgrounds. And we included all this input in our pathway document, which is kind of a roadmap. I'll show you. Voila. It's kind of a roadmap for our future thinking within research and innovation. And we finance over 100 projects, totaling about 760 million euros. And we kind of decided to kind of give priorities, thematic priorities within this Food 2030 pathways for action. So, for instance, there is the governance for food systems change, but you also can see maybe a bit tiny here, but alternative proteins is there, food waste, the microbiome, food systems Africa, the urban dimension. So I really encourage you to go and download this document. It's brand new, so published in December last year. And it really gives you a perspective on how we work within Food 2030. And this is also to show you, yes, that there are like, we already published quite a lot within this. So it's kind of a mission-driven approach, I would say, a bit before the missions. And the other instruments which we work is the EU Missions Solid Deal for Europe, because as the session actually states, we also need healthy soils in order to have sustainable food systems. Why? Because 90% of our food still comes from soils. So as you know, soils are under great threat. So the GRC, the Joint Research Center, calculated that around 60% of soils in Europe are unhealthy. So we still have to work a lot on our soils. And of course you can see that the managers are there. I mean, the associated cost, for instance, of soil degradation in the EU exceeds 50 billion euros per year. It's still huge. We are losing carbon, as Grete was saying, so it's essential also to bring our carbon back into our soils. We have 2.8 million potentially contaminated sites. And the effect, of course, of climate change put further pressure on our soils and then accelerate land degradation. So what are the solutions that we have there? We have, on the one hand, the policy side. So as you know, there was this EU soil strategy already launched in 2021, and the soil monitoring law in July 2023. And other initiatives like the sustainable carbon cycle. So all this is part of the more policy side. We have the EU Soil Observatory, and this is really handled by the Joint Research Center in Sevilla. And they're like the long-term data and knowledge hub. So this is our data repository. And last year we launched the EUSO, so the European Soil Observatory dashboard. So I also encourage you to go and have a look. And then you'll have a fantastic map with all the indicators of land degradation. So the GRC is building up 18 indicators of land degradation. And they're actually closely working together with the soil monitoring law in order to implement it. And finally, the third pillar, let's say, it's research and innovation. And it's the EU Mission Soil Deal for Europe, so the mission soil, basically. And here we really try to implement and engage and leverage all this in a meaningful way. And I'll show you how. But it's really a novel approach in Horizon Europe. We have 5 missions that launched in 2021, and the soil one is one of them. So how do we achieve actually healthy soils by 2030? It's a very ambitious objective, of course, but we're going towards that direction. How? Through 100 living labs and lighthouses. And I'll give you in a while a definition of it. But we have 8 objectives within it that we have to achieve in order to achieve these healthy soils. So we have the reduced desertification, conservation of organic carbon stocks, stop soil sealing, reduce soil pollution, prevent erosion, enhance and improve soil structure, reduce the EU global footprint on soils, and improve, very important, improve soil literacy in society. So that's actually key. As you know, we're not aware of the importance of soils. I mean, Gerrit mentioned it. We have to also improve soil literacy in our society. We are on track, and I will show you this graph. So once you understand this graph, you will see the different pillars, building blocks of the mission soil. One is the research and innovation part. So it's the usual tool within Horizon Europe. So we finance research, we finance projects. And we also closely work with EGP Soil on this, of course. But we already financed more than 50 projects for a total budget of 320 million from 21-23. And we will launch every year a work program, so a call for proposals for soil topics. And within it, we always maintain a space, a share of them, dedicated to food systems and the bioeconomy. So you're more than welcome. So the link is always there in the research and innovation programming part. And then you have the living labs. The first 25 living labs are going to start this year. So this is our biggest achievement. So there's going to be 40 living labs and 200 sites. I was mentioning you before the soil monitoring part through the Joint Research Center. And there we also have projects that will help us to achieve that. So we have benchmarks, which is our big project that will actually gather all the data from all the projects, different projects within the mission, to have kind of a repository of data in soils. And then, as I was mentioning we have the soil literacy and communication and citizen engagement part, which is our key part. So as you can see, it's research and innovation plus living labs, soil monitoring, and the literacy part. We also have some innovation hotspots, as we call them, some kind of more horizontal issues. And I just want to mention 2 of them. One is on soil biodiversity, and we have Soil Alive, which is our project is actually trying to see the effects of olives and the effects on soil, so analyzing the relationship between the two on food. And on the circular economy, we have deli soils, bean-to-bean solutions and tanks that all started this year. This year. And also working on food systems and residues, actually, that Gerrit was mentioning before. So very important part on how to put back our residues back to the soils. So they are doing they're advancing in research on this. So, and finally, this is our core part, as I was telling you. So the living labs. So, what are these? Well, we really try to create a tool that would enable to go beyond the research and innovation part. So in order to not keep the research in the hand of the researchers, we created this tool that really tries to engage and transform and scale up and uptake solutions. So it's a place where different stakeholders, can be farmers, can be researchers, can be municipalities, really in a localized place, in a landscape, try to come up with certain local, very specific solutions. According to social, cultural, economic conditions. And this is across Europe. So we have different definitions of them, some are very defined. For instance, since it's on Horizon Europe, these living labs need to be in at least three different member states across Europe, and they have to work together. One living lab needs to be composed of a group of 10-20 sites, so it's a big endeavor. And the actors, as I was telling you, farmers, researchers, advisors. And the lighthouses, on the other hand, are more individual sites, sorry. So it can be like a single farm. And there, the single farm will really like showcase and demonstrate farming and practices. So for instance, as Greg was saying, really like applied research on that field and showcasing that to the rest. And also increase the awareness and the importance of soils, which is actually one of the 4 building blocks, as I told you before. This is as I was telling you, the first call of proposals was launched, and we received a really impressive amount of proposals. So it was quite impressive. So the attention and the need is there, and we selected 5. And actually, the average number of living lab per proposal is about 5. So we have, as you can see, this is the first call, right? So we aim to reach 100 of them, of living labs. So this is the first one. So every year we'll have call of proposals for living labs. And as you can see, they're quite dispersed. Still a lot on the agricultural side. Actually, the missions aim to go beyond the agricultural soils, and we also aim to reach urban and forestry. So we're going also to push towards that direction and to really cover all kinds of soils within that landscape. Conclusion, as we know, the policy context is urgent, and food systems are extremely complex. But this is why research and innovation is more important than ever, I would say. And it's really a neutral and multi-actor place, a convening space, to really address these systemic issues that are, where we actually can meet the ambitions of the Green Deal. And Horizon Europe is a good tool to actually provide significant funding for it, and kind of directionality, well, to actually achieve this resilient and inclusive food systems and safeguarding our soils. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
There is a strategy, there is an observation and monitoring, there is research with lighthouses and with living labs providing the deployment of the better practices together with stakeholders' involvement. I really wonder, but that will be for the debate, how tough the deliverables will be that you ask from those living labs. But that's maybe already a question. We have the farmers in the room, namely Mayra, Jessica, Leah, Burmester, Mayra, okay. Mayra, you are an agronomist, you are economist, you are from Latvia, you are a crop farmer, but in Copa Cogeca, the big farmers union, you are deputy board chairman of the Latvian Farmers Parliament. And my question to you is, how realistic, how urgent is this issue of trying to promote better quality soils, healthier soils? And my second question is, what's the farmer's perception to this issue? I give you the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. Yeah, it's nice to be here. I hope that I'm not a lone farmer here, because the soil it's a base for us, for farmers. Without soil, we will not do our business. Yeah, short introduction. I'm a crop farmer. Together with my husband, we are growing wheat and winter ups and grass seed, field beans in the central part of Latvia on carbonate soils, on the good soils. And I'm a vice president of Latvian Farmers NGO called Farmers Parliament. And today I'm also representing Copa Cogeca. A few words about Copa Cogeca. It is an umbrella organization for EU farmers, and altogether we are farmers organizations from all across Europe and also from some non-EU countries. And we are working on different issues. We have more than 45 working groups on different crop specialities and also on horizontal matters. And always when COPA making opinion, it's based on views and knowledge which is gathering from the different sides of Europe. talking about soil and first I think it's for farmers it's important to start this discussion with sustainability. And sustainability, it means all three pillars, economic, environmental and social. And only when all these three pillars is respected, then we could have some possibility for the changes. Because to make changes, you need this balance, and you need also resources to invest. This format, as yesterday and today, is very important when we bring together farmers, researchers, and policy makers, because only when we are knowing each other better, and if we find together the solutions, that will work. Because for farmers, they really need solutions which work. And by punishing farmers, will not get the long-term solutions and results. And I like to remind that the transition towards sustainable agriculture did not start today or yesterday. EU farmers actually working towards sustainable agriculture already for decades. And we continue to do that to ensure that our consumers have food, that our environment and biodiversity in the right conditions, and also we are taking care of soil. Of course, this process is really long term, because in agriculture nothing will happen if you will do some changes today. This cycle of production, it sometimes take more than 5 or 10 years, and to see some results, it's really long term. And I see in my farm, for example, when we started in the beginning of 90s, when we got back our land from Soviet kolkhozes, the land in area where our farmers, it was far away from the kolkhoz center, and it was not well kept and not well fertilized, and it was on very low organic matter. Now, after the 30 years of production, we managed to improve the soil quality. We increased organic matter, and our structure of the land is better, and also the yield is actually more than 3 times higher than it was when we got our land. It's a big debate about what it means, a healthy soil, and of course when from different angles it's different. It's probably researchers have a big list of indicators, and policy makers also something proposing, and it's actually interesting how this debate on soil monitoring and resilience law went. It was the Parliament turned it into ecological status issue. Commission proposed all-out principles, but for farmers, and it doesn't take a list of 10 or 15 indicators to assess the healthy soil. For farmer, the healthy soil is a soil where they could get the planned yield, and this healthy soil for different production specialties mean different for the arable crop, arable farmers, or for livestock farmers, or for some special crops like viticulture. The soil health will vary widely, because every crop needs something different, and that's why the single standard will not work. But mainly, of course, as farmers, for us it's important that soil has a good structure, that it's rich in nutrients and resistant to erosion. It's the main indicators for us. We practice already. We already today heard some good practice which could improve the soil quality, and many farmers nowadays using precise technologies to put the fertilizer on right quantity and the right place. If the resources is enough, and farmers have improving the soil pH, and also investing in drainage system or in irrigation to have good moisture, but not all. There is different practices, and these practices farmers are implementing if they have resources and if they have knowledge. And we think that through advice and through also financial support, the farmers could invest in these good practices, and that result will be more stable, instead of just dictated to farmers what they must do. And for example, right now to get the subsidies, farmers are obligated to have this crop diversification in their farms, and I understand that on the paper maybe it looks good, but you could imagine in my area we have farmers with 30 hectares of the land, and on the two big fields, I don't know, 10 and 20 hectares, but they must grow at least 3 crops. Instead of growing 2 crops in 1 year, or maybe 1 year and then just have good crop rotation, they must divide these fields to the 3 fields and spend much more time to take care of different crops. And we think that in such a way we are just, farmers are just angry, they are just losing money, but instead, for example, this crop rotation could help more than just growing in the 1 year 3 crops. So more practices that I already told about crop rotation versus crop diversification, and cover crop, and that also could help with a reduction of plant protection products, because to reduce plant protection products, it's not just because you like to. We as farmers, for us it's important to have healthy plants on the healthy soil, and for example, cover crops, it's really good, but not every farmer could do that, because it's a certain climatic conditions, like last year in my country was very wet summer and very late summer, and we even don't have time to seed the cover crop because it was already end of the August, mid of September when we managed to harvest yield, and then after a few weeks winter already came, and yeah, that's like to say that it's really we are in different climatic conditions, and not everywhere farmers could do all which is good for soils, but at least they're trying. And in the end, few points or few ideas which could really help for farmers to improve soil health. It's first, it's a market for good market and good prices for crops which they are growing. We need more called cash crops because right now it's only few crops where farmers could get good return from what they are doing. We have good EU protein plan, but we really urge that we need to put this plan in the life, because in Europe we depend from imports in protein, but in the same time our farmers don't have possibility to improve their crop rotation in introducing more nitrate fixing crops. For example, in our farm we grow a few years ago, we introduced it in crop rotation also peas, and but the market somehow collapsed because the main market was Egypt. And when it's no market, when the price for this crop is less than production cost, of course farmers could not grow. And by protecting and by having good market for protein crops, we could improve a lot. And it's not only health, soil health, it also could give possibilities to reduce plant protection product use and mineral fertilizer use. A lot of green, these targets we could reach with that. Third point is equal distribution of animal husbandry all around Europe. That could also help because we have regions with very low animal density and no animals, no organic fertilizer, and we know that organic fertilizer is very good to boost the microbiological activity of the soil.
I suppose you can have some of us.
Yeah, we could be happy. Yeah. And that's a question, because some countries have really high density and problems and putting big money in processing of animal manure, and then we have regions in Europe where we just don't have animals, and we really dependent on fertilizer, because mineral fertilizer. Greater investments in applied research and availability of financial resources to invest, because a lot of technologies which is good for the soil, like no-till and strip-till, it costs a lot of money.
Thank you very much. A big emphasis on economical sustainability. Quality standards may differ from crop to crop or from system to system. And yes, more financial and research incentives would be better than the top-down, I'm sorry, approach that we are maybe fearing or expecting. Thank you very much. Can soil health be or become a responsibility for the whole food chain? And how? That is a question for you, Noemi van Boogaert, because you are staff member of FEB House. it has something to do with potato and vegetable processing. So it's a question for the processors. I give you the floor.
Thank you, Reet. Could I maybe have the pointer? Because I'm going to sit down. I'm carrying some extra weight with me, as you can see. And it's much more comfortable to sit. Okay, thank you first of all for the invitation. I'm very happy I can share the perspective from our industry on soil health, the opportunities and the challenges that we see as a sector with you today. So, yeah, I can see it there, yeah. So as Gerrit mentioned, I work for FVP House. F stands for fruits, V for vegetables, P for potatoes. And it's actually, this is an umbrella organization of 3 professional federations, associations. Fresh Trade Belgium, VGB and Belgapon. So the members of Fresh Trade Belgium are mainly importers and exporters of fresh fruits and vegetables, as well as freshly cut vegetables. The members of VGB are mainly the companies that produce frozen vegetables. In Belgium, this is a very important segment. We produce about 1/3 of the European production of frozen vegetables. And then lastly, Belgapon is the association for the potato processors, so companies that produce frozen potato products like fries, but also the traders of fresh potatoes. And together we represent, with those 3 federations, around 180 member companies, a quite heterogeneous group of companies, because we have small family-owned SMEs, but also large multinationals that export their products worldwide. We represent around 14,000 jobs in Belgium and also a significant annual turnover. Now, looking at the future and talking to the members, we do see a lot of potential for growth in our sector. The Food and Agriculture Organization calculated or estimated that by 2050 we will need to produce 60% more food to feed the world population of an estimated 9.3 billion people. And doing that with the farming as usual approach would take a very heavy toll on our environment. So we're convinced that shifting to more plant-based foods will be essential to meet that global demand in protein. Secondly, what we observe among consumers is that consumers are becoming more health conscious and that they are aware of the many health benefits that are associated with fruits and vegetables and plant-based diets. So we do expect a continued rise in plant-based foods in the future. And then thirdly, the environmental consideration is very important as well, an important driver. As you can see from the graph on the right, it's quite small, but the rectangular box actually shows the pulses and the root and tuber vegetables, and it shows that they need much less resources compared to animal-based products. And this is both in terms of land use, freshwater use, as well as associated greenhouse gas emissions. So a lot of potential to grow, but we're also very worried about the future because there are some enormous challenges. The first one, and I think the most important one, is climate change and unpredictable weather events. In Belgium, the past 5 years, we've seen a lot of unpredictable weather conditions, very dry periods in summer, but also heavy rainfall and even flooding. And of course, these weather events negatively impact crop yield and quality, combined with the fact that we are losing a lot of active substances and plant protection products. We are quite worried about the yields in the future. Secondly, labor shortages and associated costs with labor. I'm talking about labor on the field, on farm level, but also on labor in the companies themselves and the production facilities. It's getting increasingly difficult for farmers to find seasonal workers who are willing to do the hard work during harvesting season, but it's also very difficult for our processing companies to find the technically skilled people to work in the factories themselves. And in fact, in Belgium, we see that a lot of the employers right now are coming from across the border from the northern areas of France. Third, regulatory uncertainty. And by this, we mean, of course, all the food safety regulations that are in place, not only in Europe, but also worldwide, because our companies export worldwide and they need to have market access. We're talking about the tsunami of different farm-to-fork initiatives below the Green Deal that came all at the same time and posed a significant challenge, especially for the smaller sized companies in our sector. And then lastly, rising input costs. By input costs, I mean everything associated to the production process, going from energy, which has increased in price, but also the raw materials, the fruit and vegetables themselves. I'm talking about
oxygen.
very good. Yeah, so rising input costs, and why have these costs risen? Well, this is because of a lot of factors, geopolitical events, the war in Ukraine, but also shifting consumer preferences and so on. I wanted to show you a striking example of what we mean by these challenges and show it very concretely. This graph represents the yield, so the tons per hectare that are harvested for peas. It shows you the trend on a European level. If you look at the trend on a Belgian level, it's actually quite similar and even more striking during recent years, because we've collected that data recently in our association. So what you can see very clearly here is that since the 60s, we became very efficient in growing peas, and the yields were going up, and then suddenly we saw a drop in yields, and over the past 10 years, we've seen, a 5 to 20% decrease in the yield of peas because of a combination of the factors that I just mentioned. And that's a pity, because peas are actually extremely nutritious, but they're also environmentally friendly. They're legume crops, they fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, they actually require less synthetic fertilizer, so we want to grow more peas in the future, but we're worried if we see this pattern. So that actually brings me to the topic of today, soil health. We are convinced that soil health is crucial to have a future for vegetable production and potato production, and that this is a shared responsibility. What are the principles of soil health? I'm not going to repeat the previous speakers because they have been mentioned already, but it's ground cover, using cover crops, it's increasing biodiversity, it's minimizing intensive tillage and disturbance on the fields. It's using precision techniques for fertilization and for plant protection products to avoid negative environmental problems. Crop rotation, as Greet mentioned, is one of the measures, but also carbon buildup in the soil. And then lastly, it hasn't been mentioned yet, I think, but we have a strong belief that new varieties, cultivars of potatoes and vegetables can play an important role as well. So varieties that are adapted to drier summers, that are more nitrogen efficient and pest resistant as well. Now, how can we implement those theoretic principles in practice? How can we educate farmers? And what role can the industry play? Well, I think first of all, raise awareness among growers. Companies can engage directly with their suppliers and convince them about the importance of soil health and regenerative farming practices. We can initiate and finance agronomic research and develop new technologies to be used in the field. An example that I'm showing you is the project by Leuven, which helped us understand which factors actually contribute to the largest carbon, to the CO2 emissions in growing potatoes. That was a very useful project for us to support, and I think we definitely need more insights in that matter. Certification scheme. Certification is used a lot in the food chain to show to consumers that we're producing sustainable products, and to actually set some rules and standards for farmers to follow to have a more sustainable agriculture. And then we have a lot of agronomists working in our companies. I think there is a role for them as well, in the sense that they can provide dedicated training to growers. They can provide technical assistance in the field, trying out new methods. And lastly, we can develop partnerships with private companies, with governments, research institutes, NGOs, to provide incentives for farmers. These can be financial incentives, such as bonuses or premium prices for farmers that are willing to step into soil, well, a dedicated soil health scheme, for instance. So yeah, these are the most important things that we can do, I think. And then lastly, I'd like to mention two pieces of EU legislation that will also play an important role in this transition. The Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. These legislations will require companies to become more transparent about what they're doing about sustainability in general. Below the CSRD, there are three types of emissions: Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3. And the Scope 3 emissions are actually all those emissions associated with the value chain out of the company's own control. And if we look at our processing companies, then those Scope 3 emissions are really the most important ones. They represent 95% of the pie of emissions associated to their product. So looking at those Scope 3 emissions, we also see that agricultural activities play a significant role in them. So in the future, companies will need to bring those Scope 3 emissions down. They will have to set clear KPIs that will be monitored. They will have to implement action plans and policies. And I think they will only succeed if they actively collaborate with the farmer, but also with all the other actors in the food chain. And I think that's my final message to end this presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Noemi. A very important, I think, last statement. We will be forced by the CSRD to prove better practices at our supply chain, so at farmers' level. Now, a lot of questions, I think, in my head anyway. I give you the opportunity to ask questions, just to have more specifications or explanations on certain slides that you were not understanding very well. So just that, and then you I invite to have one statement from the other panelists where you want to react on. And I start maybe first with Julia. I asked you already a question about the deliverables. I didn't understand very well how big the guarantee will be for society that the system of living labs and lighthouses will actually change practices in agriculture. Can you already comment on that?
Yeah. No? Yes?
Yes?
Okay. Yes, indeed. So we have kind of a framework program, so it's kind of a big project of ours that will actually harmonize all these living labs. So they will be under this.
If I am a living lab,
yeah,
what obligations do I have and what proof do I have to deliver to you that I was really useful?
Yes, it's a EU-funded project, so they will have like at the beginning they will have to propose kind of a project, right? So they will have to deliver something, and so the European Commission and together with the research agency will monitor that, and we'll check, of course, that the deliverables that they promised at the beginning in the proposal are indeed met. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Questions about things you want to further having outlined? Koen. Question for who?
To Noemi about the chart with the piece and the yields. I would like to understand why it decreased so much. It's a graph at European Union level, so it went from what, 4 tons per hectare to 2 tons?
Yeah.
Since the 90s, and you quickly said it's because of all the challenges, but what is the main driver for this decrease?
I think the combination, according to the agronomists that I've spoken with, the combination of climate change and the reduction of crucial plant protection products for peas. So we clearly see, if you look at the last 15 years for Belgium, and we make the graph, then we clearly see drops in yield in those years where a certain active substance was taken away from the market. So that's one factor. But also the fact that peas have a very short growing period. If something happens, and a weather event that wasn't expected in that growing period, then everything is lost. And that's what we've seen during the past years.
Great, you're nodding. Were you expecting as a cause? Yes. A worse quality of soil. We are wearing out our soils. That might be another cause, no?
Yeah, that's difficult to say, but I'm prepared to say that. It could of course always be a cause, but yeah, I can imagine that also climate change and extreme weather events that we all have experienced in the past years also play an important role, and of course, yeah, good soils could help a little bit, but of course cannot overcome all the problems of drought and heavy weather.
Okay, another question. You want me to be more here or there? Okay, just for the video. Do you have other questions? Specifications asked? No? Then it's up to you. Maybe Noemi, what statement did you hear with the other panelists where you want to have a critical remark or another remark or
can I give a supporting
of
remark?
Course. Yes.
I wanted to give a supporting remark to something that Mayra said, that every farm is different, and I think this is really crucial to understand. I mean, we've talked about a package of different measures that you can take to increase soil health. You cannot do everything in one farm. Every farm is different. Every farmer will have to pick out those measures that he can apply in his farm. And that's also what we believe and what we see from the processing industry side.
Mayra, what did you hear by Noemi or Julia or Kate? That was really striking or wrong or very right?
Yeah, it was for me interesting, and I know that from the industry side that they are looking and they see also in future that they somehow must also motivate farmers and give some premiums, for example, to encourage them to invest in some new technologies and in new practices. And that's the direction which we as farmers really are looking, and we would like to see, because it's a lot of discussions also today in the morning on the plenary session, was that it's not enough farmers paid for that what they are doing, that it's not fair distribution of price within all food chain. And yeah, we would really like to see some changes, that also that this distribution would be more fair, and that also that, because it's very often then we are not feeling as we are in the same boat, but more fighting with the processing industry for each cent to get.
Yeah, I have the impression that you were telling, but tell me if I'm right or wrong in my understanding, that farmers are under pressure from a lot of sides. There's the pressure from policy, do it better. We expect to have your environmental approach and so on and so on. Pressures from industry, quality, yield amount and so on. Pressures from the wallet, your own wallet, and pressures from, I don't know, from society.
Yeah, that we must do more for environment.
So everything is in the basket of the farmer to be realized, and it's not fair. That's what you say. Okay, interesting. Julia, did you hear a statement in the other presentations that was striking you or inspiring you?
Yes, Mayra, you talked about investment in applied research. So I'm actually curious to know whether the kind of the approach that we are implementing at EU level in the research and innovation part is the right way to go, according to you. Because I mean, we are going to be like. So for now, we will always have like 4 calls for living labs. 3 are usually bottom up. So it's really a bottom up approach. So it's going to be really up to the participants to write really this call of proposals to identify the problems and identify the solutions for specific problems in that specific area, region, and or landscape. So
it's a very local, adapted research.
It's a local based approach. So it's a local based solution. And our objective is indeed in order to decrease this burden that you feel as a farmer, to also work together with other players like researchers, but not only. We're trying to reach local authorities and municipalities, and the private sector is also included. So we have this kind of cascading effect within our calls, that basically the projects have to kind of can identify like a percentage that will be dedicated to collaborations with farmers, for instance. And we saw this is the first call, so we're still analyzing in depth the proposals, but we saw that already 70% actually applied this kind of principle, which is very encouraging actually. So do you think that this could help, and otherwise what can we do actually more?
Mayra, short?
Yeah, I think it definitely will help, but I say that it's a big challenge because farmers must produce, they must work every day, sometimes much more than 8 hours per day. And in the same time, you're expecting that we could apply for the projects, and we could collect together farmers and also industry. We just, I don't know, 99% of farmers and 99.9% of farmers just don't have time, don't have skills,
Okay.
and all these calls, and it's a lot of bureaucracy, and that's also what farmers are scared, because they know if they will apply for some EU project, not just local, it means very big bureaucracy. And I have experience in my organization in working in different local and international projects for more than 20 years. And bureaucracy is actually bigger and bigger.
Okay.
It's a lot of paperwork.
Point made. Thank you. Great.
Yeah, I was wondering, I have a combined thought when listening to the speeches of Mayra and Leuven. Because you, Mayra, you told like you lack organic fertilization because there is almost no animal husbandry, while for instance in this region we have too much. And then Noemi mentioned also like some of the problems that the potato and vegetable industry here is facing is to have enough skilled labor and so on. So I wonder, also thinking of the diversification and so on, if if we didn't become too specialized in Europe. You have seen also the graph, like we reached like a kind of optimum in the 90s, and so for good reasons I think we could produce more and better and having more because of this specialization. But I wonder, maybe also looking into the impact on soils, maybe if that is the way to go further, or if we should diversify the places where we produce better, like having better integration of crop and animals, better spread over Europe. It's just a thought.
Yeah. And another question, Greet, I thought maybe you would put this wicked problem on the table. Soil care is something for the longer term. You need a lot of seasons and a lot of attention. So deterioration happens fast and improvement happens very slowly. And then how easy is it for industry to look beyond one season? Because in the season they can say, well, pesticide use, etc., etc. But how ever could industry, or maybe also policy, be responsible for this longer term? And especially you, Noemi. How do industry CEOs look at a question? Yes, you do not only need potatoes this year, but also pay for the rotation number 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, maybe first to answer Greet.
Yes.
About, I think you would be amazed if you would see the list of vegetables that are currently grown in Belgium and processed in Belgium. I mean, I know that around 200 different vegetable products are processed in the Belgian companies. Not all of them grown in Belgium, I agree, but a lot of them. So, and the specialization, I mean, is also a result, like, we had this very good climate and very fertile soils, which were excellent for a number of vegetables. For instance, for carrots, cabbages, spinach, peas and beans, I mean, those are the important ones. So they became highly specialized in that. And now they are adding new innovative products, let's say, to their portfolio, but in smaller amounts. Look at the edamame beans, for instance. This is a trend that came with the Asian cuisine and the sushi restaurants all over Europe. We saw that especially younger people were very excited about that product.
But it's not grown or produced locally yet?
So we actually experimented with that, and I think there are already certain places in the Netherlands and Belgium where edamame is grown. And
it's a variety of soy, so it's a legume.
Yeah, so we see that demand is softly increasing. So the companies do actually take that up and use it. And to respond to your question, the rotation, first problem is that a lot of the companies, they don't have a good view on what the rotation for a certain farmer is right now. So maybe some of them do, but not all of them. And you can ask yourself the question whether they can influence that rotation in any way, because in the end it's the farmer's land and he's the manager and he will decide what he will do next year.
Great.
Yeah, sure, I cannot ignore that. I just wonder, is there any talks, like if indeed you say, okay, we want to talk about the soil and we want to help the farmers, is there any, in the food chain, is this like a factor that is taken into account, soil health and how that fits in the rotation and how could it be done? I mean, and how maybe diversification in the food chain could help maybe to improve soil health. I just don't know if that's a kind of debate already.
Yeah, definitely. And if you, for instance, if you look at potato varieties, then I hear from the agronomists that they are actually recommending farmers also to use different varieties in different years, because every variety has a different microclimate in the soil.
Even a potato and another variety of potato and another variety of potato.
So they are
already changed the system of microbia.
And they are already actively promoting that practice among farmers.
Okay. I'm watching you. Do you have an urgent question? Because we only have 5 minutes left.
maybe a small remark.
Yes.
I'm the male farmer in the room. Isn't it all about common sense, common farmer sense, crop rotation, soil health, know what you do on the right time, the right machinery. My grandfather was working in these fields with horses. I'm working in a tractor weighs 5 or 6 tons. That's one of the main reasons I think that it sort of degraded. And
That's compaction, eh?
compaction,
A lot of
yes,
weight
but
on your
that's
soil.
What Great told us, soil compaction is one of the main reasons of degradation of soil quality, soil health. So I think it's also on European level, even in Flemish region, we have to work with calendars. Calendar farming is not the way we want to farm. Especially last year and then the beginning of this year, spring is very wet.
Correct.
I'm working on clay soils, heavy clay. I have to wait. I have to wait. I had to wait last year till beginning of May to sow.
It's absurd that politicians
Politicians are and European Commission all respect with the work you do on research and innovation. But there are too many politicians who are not aware what farming is. Farming is working with nature. Farming is not working with legislation.
Okay.
You have to follow some rules, and so my question is Commission prepared, ready, or is Commission willing to adapt legislation and follow farmers' sense on working on fields and on soil health and so on? So everyone who is farming is aware, is very conscious on soil health. Without soil, we can't grow crops. Without crops, we can't feed animals, we can't feed people. And
trust us.
trust us.
What
Yeah, we know
trust
what we
us.
do.
We have
It's in
common
our
sense.
own interest that we work on the right time and with
Okay.
the right tools and so on.
Julia, do you trust him? No. Question. Can you do something with the concept there is common sense, there is agriculture, intelligence, trust this means? How can Commission do something with this statement?
But that's why I think that we have, so talking about objectives, you mentioned these long-term, no, you mentioned these long-term objectives. So in the missions we do have this long-term 2030 objective, and the soil monitoring law has this 2050 long-term objective. So the soil is now part of the political agenda at the European level. So things are changing. So it was not, it's the only non-regulated thing that we have at EU level. So it's important to also, so this is now taken into account. A lot of research is now going into it, so this is what we are supporting. And the fact that the research is moving things beyond the political agenda, this is, I think it's positive. Anywhere we're going, research must not stop, so this is one of the key pillars, I have to say. In terms of bureaucracy, I mean, Ursula von der Leyen mentioned the fact that we cut the red tape, so this is also part now of the political agenda, and we have this dialogue now in place, so together with the farmers. So this is also an initiative that is very important at EU level. But I have to say that soil is now into consideration. If you take also the Common Agricultural Policy, we already have 40 years dedicated to soil. So it is changing. So the political landscape is changing, and soil is more and more into the political agenda, also through other regulations supporting that.
Okay, I did hear an answer on how do you deal with trust a little bit.
Trust with the dialogue, with the bottom-up approach and the involvement of different stakeholders. That's why we believe that local-based living labs are one of the solutions, not the only solutions, but in order to include the farmers, the private sector, the researchers, I think this is going to be one of the tools that we're going to use in the future.
We are entering the last statements. Great. My question was, you can say, add to the discussion, and then my question is, what do you, in your perspective, do we need most urgently to change? And what did you want to add?
Yeah, first of all, I agree that farmers need the flexibility to decide according to the weather, to market conditions, and many farmers really do know what they're doing, and so having all these rules is, yeah, I think
counterproductive.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, indeed. But on the other hand, it's also important that we do not degrade our soils, and some farmers do really well, but not all. So yeah, there's always some regulation necessary maybe, but from the research point of view, I think it's important that we come up with kind of result-based approaches for monitoring maybe, that the farmer can keep the flexibility on what he's doing. It's the result that matters, and then you also don't need so much of this calendar farming, I think, when we go more to the result-based. Of course, that's a challenge. I'm coordinating one of the projects on monitoring, on carbon monitoring that you have shown, and yeah, there also we try to see how could you do that, this result-based, but not having too much administrative burden again for the farmers, but really making a combination maybe of the information that is already there, using models, maybe satellite imagery, and we're not yet there, but my hope is that we might come to a solution that we can really monitor the result without having reducing the burden for farmers to apply for such calendar farming or having more bureaucracy and so on. And that's a challenge for the research.
Point taken. Noemi, is there something that, in your opinion and from your perspective, should need to change urgently in this topic?
Yeah, I think the Commission is already doing a lot in terms of investing in research and new technological innovations, and for instance the new genomic techniques legislation has been a really important one for our sector. But things still take too much time. For instance, if you look at low-risk pesticides, biostimulants and other alternatives, it takes too much time to get those substances approved on a European level, and looking at the challenge of climate change, we really need fast solutions.
Mm-hmm. Fast no, please. Julia? First Mayra. Mayra, in your opinion, as a farmer and as a representative of Copa Cogeca, do you trust what is happening? There's happening a lot in the topic of soil. The EU soil strategy, the monitoring law, health law, soil mission, EU carbon removal certificate framework. All this year, there's coming a storm over your head.
Yeah, and that's only on the soil, but we have also other strategies.
Are you worried?
And we're really feeling like it's like the snowball is just coming, and
what do you need to
I think right now we need just to implement what we have, then and adapt to the real situation, and then come with something new. Because I think it's too many things in the same time, and we will not get the good results because it's just like big hubs around, and it's really welcome what the Commission is doing right now. That it's a little bit slowed down, and it said that to find other ways how to reduce the bureaucracy. That's what we really need, because we really need space for work and for implementation of all these new things which is coming from the researchers.
Julia, last word.
Yes, maybe we can provide a safe space indeed, and to allow, because I hear fast and I hear slow, so maybe we can indeed combine the two and to find a balance between the needs and the different needs of the different stakeholders.
Okay, thank you very much, dear panelists Noemi, Mayra, Julia and Greet.